horror and Halloween are synonymous. You can't have Halloween without horror. From masks in stores, sales on vampire and pumpkin-shaped candy, and, of course, horror movies. Yes, the horror movie. Sure, there's some about incorporeal spooks hunting unsuspecting naysayers, the psychological thriller that gets under your skin, shock horror that exposes you to the worst depravity they can get away with showing on the screen, and so many other subgenres, all of which are great and morbidly fantastical in their own right. But then there's my favorite, the slasher. Most slashers involve some lunatic in a mask stalking unsuspecting teenagers so as to dispose of them in the worst ways. Most of these films, despite their stereotypes, contain a good amount of backstory and character development, all leading up to the proverbial chase scene that ends in someone's demise and the conclusion of the story. I heard the doorbell to my home and quickly stood up, placing my classic slasher flick on pause. It was Halloween after all, and the trick-or-treaters had been stopping by all night. But when I opened the door, I was greeted by a hulking figure wearing the same mask I had just seen being worn by the killer on my TV. Quickly, I slammed the door, but on instinct alone, not expecting a full-grown human to be wearing a face mask on the other side of the door. As I did, the man's hand crashed through the small window on the door at head level. Fearing for my life, I backed away as the dark shape opened the door and practically fell through my entranceway. With haste, I ran to my kitchen and grabbed the largest knife I could find and started back towards my front door. Since he had stumbled, it didn't take long for me to find the opportunity to plunge the blade of the knife into the man to the hilt before he had a chance to get up. When I finally stopped, I stood upright, wiped the blood free from my face, and calmed myself the best I could, while looking at the motionless corpse that lay at my feet. As I calmed, however, I recollected some of the events that had just transpired. Was this man a killer, or just some overgrown trick-or-treater? Was it his hand that went through the window, or was it his head when I slammed the door so hard? Did he stumble as he entered my home, or did he tumble due to the blow to the head as opposed to a fist? Did I murder an innocent man, or stop a killer? As I pondered these things, another, more sinister notion came to mind, awoken by the recent mishap and the replica movie mask laying at my feet. I wonder what else I can get away with tonight. Drip, drip, drip. The consistent sound of liquid falling against concrete echoes throughout the room, while light pitter-patters of small black rats scampering across the floor momentarily distracts the dark shadow sitting in the corner. A small, disturbing smile creeps onto his lips upon hearing the cries of pain when the tip of his shoe sends the creatures in different directions. He has no intention of letting those vile and hungry things ruin his plans. He has waited far too long and worked way too hard for this moment to be different than what he's been imagining. Chains rattle further within the room as she stirs, soft whimpers quickly filling it. Her head slightly rises, shaking from side to side as if she can't see the crumbling, slime-covered, damp walls surrounding her. Well, maybe she can't. At least not much with the blindfold partially covering her eyes. She whimpers ever so softly when his silhouette is outlined by the candelabra. Fear overwhelms the poor girl, her heart beginning to race as she attempts to free herself from the shackles. Her light blue eyes widen as the shadow gracefully moves towards her weak and semi-broken body. Light bounces off the walls as he raises his hand, a large metal blade residing in his grip. "I was beginning to think you weren't going to wake up," his rough voice growls. "Where am I?" she croaks. She grimaces from the dryness of her throat, causing his heart to thump wildly against his chest. The sinister man quickly becomes excited as he glides the blade across her left forearm. Tears roll down the side of her face, but she refuses to scream, refuses to give in to this sick and twisted game. "Hush, silly girl. Talking will only make you weaker, and I plan to keep you for quite some time." "What do you want from me?" "I think you know the answer to that." "But I don't even know who you are," she sobs. "Oh, you'll figure it out soon enough," he chuckles. "I've been watching you for a while now." Her chest starts to steadily rise and fall, her staggered breathing slowing as she tries to calm herself down. One can only imagine what thoughts are swirling around her mind at the moment. He knows. Oh, he already knows that this will be the best work he's done yet. This will be the most memorable muse he's ever had. Long, slender fingers glide through her shoulder-length, blood-soaked, chestnut-colored hair, while his face inches closer to hers. He inhales a deep breath and grins at the precise moment he pulls the satin fabric from her face. Her eyes widen upon seeing him so close to her. She must recognize him. She must finally understand what's happening at that particular moment, because she quickly tries to pull away, except those chains rattle with every ounce of strength she can muster up. Poor brittle girl. Instincts won't be able to help her. Nothing can. This can't be happening. Relationships aren't supposed to end up like this. You don't treat someone you love this way. She raises her voice. Why are you doing this, Josh? Well, maybe because I am going to love seeing the terrified look in your eyes when you realize no one can hear you. Did you honestly think I would have spent the past year and a half with you if I hadn't been planning something spectacular? Please, let me go. You know I can't do that, Melody. He frowns. I won't tell anyone. I'll stay quiet. Just please let me go. She desperately pleads. Of course not. You are never getting out of here. Alive, anyway. The loud, high-pitched, and desperate screams vibrating her vocal cords could make anyone grind their teeth. Her beautiful porcelain skin, stained red, is gouged with the tip of his serrated blade. It gives him the thrill of his life. He has spent nearly 2 years fantasizing about this exact moment, earning her trust, making her think that he loved her. Poor Melody. Poor sweet, innocent, and dumb Melody. She ignored the signs. Ignored his strange, obsessive behavior because, deep down, she didn't believe he could really do something so horrible. Her screams have long since fallen silent. It won't take long for his masterpiece to be finished, and he's running out of time. Josh carries his fresh, leather coffee table out of the garage, shutting out the lights behind him. He is exhausted from a day's hard labor. His tired legs carry him through the small hallway of his house, fingers tightly clutching his newest piece of artwork. He places the table in the middle of his living room, just as sirens sound in the distance. What a shame it is to have such noisy neighbors. Too bad he couldn't have taken care of them first. He falls into the body-shaped groove of his couch, folding his arms over his chest while focusing his attention on the table just before him. They're getting closer. It's only a matter of time before those police officers burst through his doors. Melody's sweet screams ring in his ears, his eyes trailing along the handmade piece of furniture. She is the love of his life, his work life. Red and blue lights brightly flash outside his windows, rapid bangs sounding on the front door while unfamiliar voices call out for him to surrender himself. Josh remains seated, allowing the officers to break down the leathery doors and enter his safe haven. They've been chasing him for a very long time, missing him by mere minutes wherever he has traveled to, dozens of innocent women falling prey to his sickening needs. Josh has no intention to run this time. He wants everyone to see firsthand what he has created. Josh knows that he might spend a few years in prison, and he knows he will most likely be executed for what he's done, but to him, it was well worth it. A sinister, wide smile creeps onto his lips as satisfaction settles upon him. She truly was his best work. "Thank you, Melody," he whispers. The earliest example of my power I can remember is when I was 3 years old, sitting on the beach with my dad. We were staring out into the sea, watching the waves drift gently in the wind, just enjoying the moment. I was sitting on his lap, slowly falling asleep, when the setting sun seemed to twist and bend before my very eyes as it descended beneath the ocean surface. Within moments, it had finished its transformation, now being the shape of a yellowish heart. Great bands of red suddenly pulsed across the sky, soaking through the clouds and stretching for miles and miles. I remember being awestruck at the silky smoothness of that color, and the way it drifted outward like waves washing against the shore. The next day, my dad proposed to my mother on what she always described as the happiest day of her life. These strange sunset visions would keep happening for years to come. Sometimes I would see a face materialize from behind a cloud, and soon it would appear in my day-to-day life. Other times I'd see weather patterns mirrored in the sunlight, from snow to floods to tornadoes. Once or twice a year, I would even see entire scenarios play out in stunning detail, like a movie was being projected onto the sky. It's a power that I'd always treasured, but never shared, no matter how much I wanted to. Though I fear that the time for sharing is now over. Around a year ago, I was outside, waiting for the sun to set as I used to do every day. I live in the highest house of a particularly rural countryside area with a once mesmerizing view of the sunset. My mind was weary and aching for sleep that night, so I was half awake when I saw a sheet of pure black begin to creep over the horizon. It slowly washed around the curvature of the sun and began to erode the sky, little by little, like an ink spill across a piece of paper. I could only watch as the blackness traveled further and further upwards, desperately willing it to stop. Black is never a good omen. And that night, I saw more blackness than in any of my previous visions combined. Since then, my sunset visions have ended, but the piercing blackness has remained. And instead of gradually fading away as I hoped it would, it has only occupied more and more space as time goes on. Just a few months after that initial vision, the blackness occupied at least an entire quarter of the sky. In June, that fraction doubled to roughly half. It was totally surreal, like half of the world was permanently stuck in night and the other trapped in day. As the suffocating blackness grew, so did the turmoil of everyday life. I heard ever-increasing reports of war and conflict breaking out across the entire world. Riots, shootings, and terrorist plots were constant. Food became short, as did drinkable water, and the worldwide climate took a turn for the worse. And although these struggles affected the entire planet, no one but me could see the cause. The Earth was choking under the poison sky. The beautiful visions I saw when the sun still shone were replaced with foreboding nightmares that soared across the blackness. I saw only imagery of bombs, screaming children, ruined towns and cities with bodies piling up by the thousands. There were bones, fire, mutilated corpses, starving families. Each vision seemed to be more terrible than the last. Today was the day the blackness reached the other side of the world. There are sirens blaring constantly. I hear people shouting from where I've barricaded myself in my room. Occasionally there are gunshots, but that doesn't matter anymore. Because a few minutes ago, a mushroom cloud appeared on the horizon, and another, and another. Now all I hear is screaming. To anyone that finds these scraps of paper at my skeleton long after the nukes have dropped, I'm sorry. Sorry that I didn't have the confidence to share my insight with the world. Sorry that I hoarded my visions instead of telling somebody, anybody, what I knew was happening. Maybe if I hadn't been so greedy, the world wouldn't have suffered so much. I can feel the wind picking up through the broken windows. It won't be long now. I've been retired for a few years now. They've been good years. I liked working in the shop well enough, but now I get to do what I really love every day. Let me break down my daily schedule and my hobby for simplicity's sake. 1. Each morning, I go to the speedway next to the apartment where I'm staying. I know it's not ideal to spend one's golden years in an apartment, but I've always been thrifty and I like to live a relatively stripped-back lifestyle. Anyway, at Speedway I buy a donut for $1.99, which I purchase with 2 crumpled dollar bills. 2. The guy behind the counter gives me a penny back, and I place it into my pocket. I then make small talk with him about the weather or whatever has been in the news. I don't enjoy this, but I'm old and he's too polite to shut me up, so it's a fun little game. Still, it's not my favorite game. I'll get to that soon enough. 3. I walk around town while eating the glazed donut I've purchased. I'm on the lookout for a tall building with a view of the street below. When I find one that suits my needs, I walk to the roof and watch the people of my city from above. It makes me feel like Batman or someone who's about to die. It's really very lovely. 4. I retrieve the penny from my pocket. It drops to the ground below me. 5. I wait. Sometimes it's only a few seconds. Sometimes it's ages. Eventually, someone bends down and pockets the penny I have gifted out into the universe. They chuckle to themselves that it's their lucky day or something to that effect. They're wrong. Usually it's an older fellow like myself who takes the penny. Sometimes it's someone young, fast and strong. That always makes for more of a challenge. Still, every time, I catch them eventually. Some people take longer than others, but no one is as careful as they should be. 6. When I do catch them, I take the penny back. I also take parts of them, but that's too personal to get into with strangers. Sometimes they, of course, have separated from the penny when I get to them, in which case I just take a penny from the take-a-penny jar during my morning visit. Regardless, I add the penny to my change jar, and the memory of the kill gets filed away in the back of my mind as something to bring me joy when the world becomes too cold. My change jar contains nearly $1 in pennies. I suspect it will only become fuller the longer I live. My advice to you is to leave change where you find it. And, always keep occupied with a hobby, as they can bring invaluable pleasure. When I am sad, I like to listen to water. It has a rhythm that soothes, makes the most turmoiled heart grow silent. Our family lived in a house that bordered the woods. I would constantly take long strolls down the worn dirt path, past the mossy boulder and through the hidden path covered by thorny vines. This would lead to a hidden grotto in the woods, a nice, wide open area where all you had was the water, the animals, and the sounds of nature. It was peaceful. My personal life was nothing short of mundane. I wasn't the best-looking girl, and while I had a fairly big group of friends, I was by no means popular. Nor did I want to be. I was perfectly content enjoying my time with my close friends and books. My home life was miserable. My father was a big tech CEO who was constantly either away for work or home tormenting us while drunk. My mother wasn't much better. She was a nurse at a prestigious hospital, the head nurse at that, and this meant long hours and not much time for me. I don't really mind the loneliness though. It gives me plenty of time to read. During the weekends, I would run off to the grotto. Dad would get lost in his shows while guzzling every ounce of alcohol in a 10-mile radius. My older brother would spend all of his free time in his room watching the newest anime that caught his fancy. Mom worked. That hurt me the most. I just wanted a close relationship with my mother more than anything. This particular October evening, I had spent all day and most of the evening at the grotto listening to creepypastas narrated by the Dark Somnium on my new iPhone. The battery was getting low, which was when I decided it was time to go home. The air was getting a bit chilly, and I still wanted to listen to some of the sounds of the late evening nature. Pulling out my earbuds, I started to focus on those sounds. The birds were singing. The water was still audible through the bushes. And in the distance, deer were running. There was also a new, foreign sound. Singing. A very soothing singing. It was coming back from the grotto. Turning around, I started to make my way back. The song was like nothing I had ever heard before. It reminded me of the fantasy books I'd spent most of my life reading. But when I arrived back at the grotto, the singing had stopped. I looked around for a few minutes, but all I found was a message carved on the tree in the middle of the grotto saying, "Come again next weekend." After that, the week felt unnaturally long. All that was going through my head was the singing, its soothing melody, the tone, all of it. I needed more. My friends would drone on about things we normally cared about. Boys, bands, the normal weekly grind. Yet, all that was going through my head was the enchanting feeling the forest and the song gave me. "Hey, Ashley, you okay?" my friend Sarah asked. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking about what I'm gonna read this weekend," I coyly responded. "You always go to that grotto, are you doing okay? I seriously worry about you with your home life and all," Sarah's older brother, Jack, cut in. "Jack! Oh, sorry, Ashley, I swear sometimes my brother has no tact," Sarah said while punching her brother in the arm. Sarah and Jack have been friends with me my entire childhood. They care about me, but are also too blunt about it. It's fine. Yeah, I'm okay. Reading is a good escape. Maybe sometime you guys can come with me and we can have a picnic and reading day. That sounds fun! We'll plan on it for sometime soon, Sarah exclaimed happily. The week finally came to an end when a rare occurrence happened. My father needed to work throughout the weekend. When this happens, he brings home his laptop and spends the weekend in the kitchen doing whatever he does for work. And he constantly stares into the backyard as if he's looking for something in the woods. My mother was out of town for a business trip, and my brother told me he was having a, quote, anime bonanza, if the fedora and katana were to be believed. He was in his own little world. I grabbed my books, iPhone, earbuds, and some food. Rushing down my normal trail, I was in a frenzy to get to the grotto. On my arrival, I quickly set up where I would be reading and eating for the day. This was followed up by a long period of listening to creepypastas and reading fantasy books. I hummed to myself and got lost in my own little world, and before I knew it, evening had fallen. The October air was starting to chill me, and I contemplated heading home for the day, but just then, the soothing singing started up. But this time, I was in the grotto. A beautiful woman was standing by the tree, singing the lovely melody. She glided across the water and, in an ancient yet soft tone, she spoke to me. "Why are you alone, young one?" For some reason, those were the words that did it. I started bawling my eyes out, crying to her about my father's busy work schedule and drinking habits, how I just wanted an ounce of love for my mom. I then told her how my brother and I had nothing in common, and finally I told her about the fact that my friends meant well, but I was slowly drifting away from them. I just wanted someone to know how alone I felt, someone to care. Upon hearing all of this, the lady had a smile of empathy on her face. She told me to return tomorrow, and that she would have a song ready for me to soothe my sorrow. Then I fell asleep. I woke up the next day in my room. My father said he had found me sleeping in our backyard, and he worried about me, so he carried me there. "Ashley, if anything is happening in those woods, you can tell me. I'm here for you," he said, in a serious and loving tone. The words to me felt blank, like a token saying he was spewing out to give the mirage of love. How could he love me? He was an abusive drunkard who excused his behavior with work. Yet, his facial expression seemed sincere and oddly knowledgeable. Regardless, all I could think about was the fact that I had to go back to the grotto. I had to experience that true love again. I was desperate to go to my newfound mother figure and soak in the new song. I returned to the grotto, this time prepared for a shorter stay. Having slept through most of the morning and into the afternoon, it was clear that it wouldn't be a long stay at the grotto before the lady appeared again. My excitement resonated through the forest, and the wildlife sang their joyful songs with even more vigor than before. Evening fell again, and as usual, it started with the same soothing song. This time, though, something different happened. The song gently faded out, and a new song, one that soothed my soul and fears, came in. For the first time in a long time, I was truly happy. My soul resonated and I closed my eyes, thoroughly enjoying the change. The lady appeared again, this time saying, "Young one, you are pure of heart, gentle and loved. I will give you an answer that will take away the pain in your heart. Meet me midway through next week on All Hallows Eve. I couldn't do anything but nod in agreement and doze off, again waking in my bed with my father thoroughly worried about why I was found in the backyard again. He tried talking to me about it, asking if I needed to talk to a therapist or something. Not wanting anyone to know my plans, I simply told him I had gotten exhausted and decided to spend the night sleeping under the stars. This wasn't unusual for me. I'm a nature freak at heart, and our backyard is a relatively safe space. This week, I was quiet. Making sure not to bring attention to myself, I acted normal in public, taking regular walks through town and returning to my active lifestyle. My friends were happy to see me return to, quote, normal. Seeing her tonight will be so relaxing, hearing the song and finally being loved. When I return, this diary will remind me of all the wonderful things I have seen. My name is Special Agent Alex Stone. What I've just read to you is the diary entries of a girl who has been missing since Halloween of last year. Since then, the townsfolk have been complaining of hearing a song every full moon described as, quote, distressing and haunting. After checking the woods behind her house with drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, and search dogs, we have found no evidence of a grotto. We have also heard no singing. Whatever happened to this young lady on Halloween has set things in motion. I can assure you, the Halloween of 2020 will be much worse. Stay safe, friends. And, for heaven's sake, if you hear singing this Halloween, just please run. I don't want to be searching for you next. These reports are made public by my supervisor as we deem the threat to the public as more important than the details of the case this reveals. No lady has ever been found. No grotto has ever been found. There was no song. We suspect someone is kidnapping abused girls. The final update to this case is approximately a month prior to October 1st, 2020. The waterlogged body of a young woman, found to be Miss Ashley Rose, was found in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Despite the coroner's report saying she had been there for over a month, her body was still sopping wet. We can now confirm that someone is kidnapping young ladies and leaving their waterlogged bodies in the desert. We will be watching all reports for October 31st, 2020 and keeping in touch as we can. Stay safe, and happy Halloween.